ideas, we were discussing about the diffusion and osmosis. Okay, so in this section we are going to study about another process involved in the absorption of water by plants. Okay, so here we are discussing about the imbibition. It's another process involved in the absorption of water by the plants. So what is imbibition? So imbibition is a process by which the plant cells absorb water through surface attraction. Okay, it's a process by which the plant cells absorb water through surface attraction. For example, the case of the swelling of seeds. Okay, you might have seen the swelling of seeds and the swelling of wooden doors during rainy season. These are examples of for what? The process of what? The imbibition. Okay, so in the case of imbibition, it's an example for passive transport. And this passive transport, it takes place along the concentration gradient. That means from a higher concentration to lower concentration. So just like the diffusion and osmosis, it is a passive transport. And in passive transport, there is no requirement of energy. Okay. So now we are moving to another kind of just opposite to the passive transport. That is what? Active transport. In the case of passive transport, there is no requirement of energy. Passive transport requires no energy. Whereas the active transport requires energy in the form of ATP molecules. Okay. So what is meant by active transport? Okay. So it is the movement of ions of elements from a region of their lower concentration to higher concentration. That means it is against the concentration gradient and it requires high amount of energy. Okay. So for example, we know that the concentration of ions such as nitrates, sulfates, manganese, these are very much higher in the roots. We know that in the plant's roots, in the vacuole, inside the vacuole we can see the cell cell. In the cell cell, we can see what? The increased concentration, the higher concentration of these nitrates and sulfates. The ions can be seen in the root cells. Okay, and their concentration is comparatively less in the soil water, the surrounding soil water. So these are the roots. This is the soil. So in the soil water, we can see these salts. These ions can be seen. The nitrates, sulfates can be seen. But their concentration is less in the soil water when we compare to their concentration in the root cells. Okay. So this has to be transported from the lower concentration to the higher concentration. That means the plants need these nitrates and sulfates. It's a requirement. It's a basic requirement of what? Plants. So they need it. So they have to absorb this from the soil. Okay. So in the soil, their concentration is less. Okay. In the root cells, their concentration is higher. Okay. So this absorption takes place just against what? The concentration gradient. That means from the region of the lower concentration to the region of higher concentration. Okay, so this transport need the energy in the form of what? The ATP molecules, adenosine triphosphate. Okay, so in the case of active transport, the main difference between the active and the passive transport is the requirement of energy. In the case of active transport, the energy is needed, but in the case of passive transport, there is no need of energy. Okay, so now let's move to the next topic. Now, let's know about turgidity and flaccidity. Okay, we know that the root hairs of cells which are permeable to water. In the root hairs, we can see the large vacuole, and in the vacuole, we can see the cell sap. Okay, so the root hairs, we can see the cell sap, and we know that the cell sap which is highly concentrated. The cell sap is highly concentrated. You just look here. So this is the cell. Okay. Then here it is surrounded by what? Water. The cell is surrounded by water. So this is water. So here this is the cell wall. Okay, cell wall. Then here this space. The space is called the cytoplasm. Okay. Then this one is the vacuole. This one is vacuole. In the vacuole we can see the cell sap. Okay. So the cell sap is highly concentrated, and if this cell, the cell, it is placed or it is surrounded by water. If this cell is surrounded by water, okay, what will happen? There will be what? Osmosis. That means what? End osmosis may takes place. Okay. So what will happen? If there is endosmosis, what will happen? The vacuole will expand. This vacuole, it will expand. Okay. And this condition, this situation, it may continue for some time. This situation may continue for some time. And a condition will reach, a situation will reach where no more water enter the cell. No more water can enter into the cell. Okay. And this condition is known as what? Turgidity. So here, the pressure of cell content against the cell wall. That means the pressure of the cell content. This is the cell content against the cell wall. So the pressure of the cell content against cell wall is known as the Turgor pressure. So this is the Turgor pressure. At the same time, the pressure exerted by the cell wall will exert some pressure on the cell contents. That is known as wall pressure. Okay. The pressure of cell content against cell wall is known as Turgor pressure. At the same time, the pressure exerted by the cell wall on the cell content is known as what? The wall pressure. Okay, so there is what? Endosmosis is taking place, and due to this endosmosis, the vacuole will expand. Okay, so this condition is known as what? The turgidity. Okay, and this cell is known as what? A turgid cell. So this is a turgid cell. Okay. Now let's move to the flaccidity. It is just a reverse of what? Turgidity. Flaccidity is just a reverse of turgidity. Now, this turgid cell, if this turgid cell is placed in, it is placed in a hypertonic solution. So this is a turgid cell, and it is placed in a hypertonic solution. What will happen? So that means what? There is what? Exosmosis will take place. So it is placed, now we are placing this turgid cell in a hypertonic solution. So at that time, the water from the cell, okay, it moves outside. That is what? Exosmosis will take place. So due to this exosmosis, what will happen? The cell cytoplasm, it will shrink. Okay, that is just a reverse of what? Turgidity. So this condition is known as what? Flaccidity. And that time, in that stage, the cell is known as in flaccid. Cell is what? Flaccid. And the phenomenon or the condition is known as what? Flaccidity. Okay. So let's move to, now we can study about the uses of what? The Turgor pressure. The Turgor pressure which developed in the roots. Okay, the Turgor pressure which developed in the roots, it built up the root pressure. Okay, the Turgor pressure which developed in the root cells. The Turgor pressure which is developed in these root cells, it builds up what? The root pressure. Then what is root pressure? It is the pressure developed in the roots due to the continuous inflow of what? Water. So there is always what? Endosmosis. There is continuous inflow of water. It is occurring in the roots. Okay, that creates what? The root pressure. So the Turgor pressure which is developed in the root cells, that build up what? The root pressure. And this root pressure, it helps in the ascent of sap upwards through the stem. Okay, the root pressure, it helps in the ascent of sap. The nutrients, all this, the water, all these are what? It is going upwards through the stem. Okay, then if I cut off this shoot, okay, now I am going to cut off this shoot. Okay, here. If I cut off this shoot, what will happen? The water will immediately comes out of it. Okay, immediately comes out of from the cut part, cut portion. Okay, now I am going to cut this shoot. Okay, so if I cut this from this part, this is the cut portion. Okay, from this part there is what? Immediately there is continuous inflow, and this water may appear out. It may comes out. Okay, it is due to what? It is just due to the root pressure. Okay, now let's see the another usage of what? The use of what? The Turgor pressure. The Turgor pressure which keeps the cells and its organelles stretched. Okay, the stretched condition of the cells and its organelles, it is very important for the proper functioning of the cell. Okay, so it keeps the cells and cell organelles stretched. Then it is necessary, the Turgor pressure is necessary for the enlargement of the cells. Then the Turgor pressure which provides support to the living tissues like parenchyma. So it provides support to the living tissues like parenchyma. It is also very important for the shape of the flower or the shape of the shoot. Okay, for all these things, the Turgor pressure is very important. And it also keeps the leaves fully expanded, just like this. Okay, just a fully expanded condition. So Turgor pressure keeps the leaves fully expanded, and it is expanded towards, it can be easily expanded towards the sunlight. Okay, then what will happen if there is no turgidity, if there is loss of turgidity? The loss of turgidity, it may result in what? The shoots will droop down and the leaves wilt. Okay. For example, in the case of the rapid drooping of the sensitive plant, that is Mimosa pudica, it is due to the Turgor movement, or what? The loss of, it is due to the loss of the turgidity. Now here, this is the sensitive plant. Okay, so here the stimulus of touch, it may leads to the loss of Turgor pressure. So here the stimulus of touch, it may leads to the loss of Turgor pressure, and the leaves will droop down immediately after touching. Okay, within 2 to 3 seconds it will droop down. Okay, now I am going to touch this. Okay, okay, you can see that just immediately the touching, you can see that the leaves will droop down. Okay, it is due to what? The Turgor movement. So this experiment, okay, you can see that it is due to what? The Turgor movement. The Turgor pressure, it helps in the opening and the closing of stomata. Okay, so during photosynthesis, the guard cells will absorb more amount of water, increased amount of water from the neighboring cells, and it will become turgid. It will become the turgid condition. Okay, and due to the high Turgor pressure, the high Turgor pressure causes the guard cells to bulge out. Okay, then at that time the stomata will open. Then during night time, at night we know that there is no photosynthesis. Okay, during night time there is no photosynthesis, so that there is a shortage of water in the leaves. Okay, so because of that, the guard cells, it will become flaccid, and that the stomata will be closed. So the turgor pressure helps in the opening and the closing of stomata. So far we have discussed some of the uses of what? The turgor pressure. So now we are going to conclude this section, and you may go through your textbook, and if you have any doubts you can contact me. Okay, so now bye bye. Thank you.